My name is Tyrus Muidhiga. I'm from NCBA, where I'm the Group Director responsible for retail banking, which is the part of the business that looks after our services to individuals, both in Kenya and elsewhere, our SMEs of all sizes, including what we call commercial services, commercial clients, which is the really big SMEs, and all our branch operations. I'm here on behalf of John Gashora, our Group Managing Director, who's presently in New York for the UNGA forums, I think with Rosalind. So they are fraternizing over there. And who is also a returnee. I should start by saying, as Alex asked me, I am a returnee myself. Dared abroad for the first time 20 years ago. Wasn't too daring because I only went to Uganda. And then I went to Tanzania. And then I dared to come back. And then I dared to go back again to Tanzania. And then I came back again. So I'm 2 times a returnee. And then I got really bold and went to Singapore for 3 years. And then I returned again. So I think I've earned my chevrons to speak to you today as a returnee. I don't know how many of you have returned to Kenya 3 times. I have. And so I can totally relate to the conversation today. And I'll talk about why NCBA is particularly interested in this. Because having worked in the diaspora myself, banks in Kenya, many banks in Kenya have seen the opportunity, and we've all launched diaspora banking services where we reach out to you. As Alex said, just this year we've been with his organization to Australia. Rona and her team spent 6 weeks in the US. Earlier this year, it was my first ever visit to the US as well. I visited Texas and Jersey and Boston. And the needs of Kenyans in the diaspora from a banking perspective are fairly well understood. But when we started to think, how might one develop our proposition and what we want to achieve for this segment and this sector, we actually developed our proposition and our scope of coverage from the beginnings of your immigration. The services that people who are living Kenya need to go are very unique in and of themselves. And then we went into now banking you when you're where you are, but also, and very importantly and very relevant today, to when you come back, because the financial needs through that continuum are actually very different. At the core of it is banking, naturally. You want your money to be kept safe, finance when you need it, transfers when you need to do them. But the way you curate that experience is very important. Many of you here are our clients. Some faces I recognize, some people we've talked to, whether when we were abroad or not. And I do hope that in the course of our interactions today, you will begin to see that this is an area that we take seriously. I'm actually quite impressed, and apologies that I got a bit late, but to find the room this full just tells you that I think we're on to something. Chams Media, congratulations for also your first ever returnees conference. But also that gives me a lot of confidence that creating forums where we talk to Kenyans that have lived and worked abroad and have come back is actually a very relevant conversation, looking at just the number of people that you're here. We do recognize, I personally went through it, that it can be challenging. When you're in Uganda, maybe not so much. When you start to go 5 time zones away, 8 time zones away, 12 time zones away, it starts to become a little bit more challenging. Some of you may be left when you're teenagers and you've come back adults with probably grandchildren already. It can be daunting, it can be challenging. Some left, never came back, have now come back, and you're starting to figure out whatever happened to Thika Road. When I was in Dallas a few months ago, my relatives, some of whom have never been back, were talking about traffic jams and potholes on Kenyan roads, and I said, we don't have those problems anymore in Kenya. And so I can totally relate to the experience when you come back. And it's very simple as, where do I live? The home I lived in 20 years ago has changed massively. And maybe that's not the home that I would want to live. Or how do I invest? Where do I start? And I want to just say from the beginning of my remarks that NCBA is here to help, and I will talk about NCBA in a little while. But let me talk about Kenya first. We pride ourselves to have one of the most stable financial sectors in Africa, often considered the most developed in sub-Saharan Africa, probably excluding South Africa, offering a wealth of opportunities and solutions for every need that any client would have. Kenya offers a dynamic environment where you can make significant impact and build a prosperous future. From the vibrant tech scene, thriving agribusiness, we've seen a video on that already, to the booming real estate market, renewable energy, there's immense potential and innovation for growth. For somebody who's traveled for maybe 30 years of my career, I'm kicking myself where I never thought I could start a business to deal with lost luggage. Congratulations, sir. Man, that is Kenya for you. Several key factors have contributed to our nation's thriving investment and financial sector landscape. I'll start with, and despite both recent and general challenges, a relative political stability. I think we take it for granted until you actually live, and some of you have lived in countries where political stability is not taken for as much for granted as we take it in Kenya. And yes, we do love complaining. I was in a meeting with a gentleman from the UK, and I was complaining, we are complaining right now that it is hot. And he was like, it's so pleasant. I said, yeah, we are very spoiled in Kenya. And this stability has fostered investor confidence across all our sectors, a growing middle class that is finding the opportunities to grow and thrive, which fuels demand for a wide range of goods and services and sustaining our economic growth. We enjoy a robust and very well-developed regulatory and legal framework, and very importantly, an independent judiciary. A lot of people have commented on some of the recent political events we had, an election that was actually scrapped and repeated. If that is not independence and stability and institutions that are strong in themselves, that should really give you confidence that, you know, Kenya has an environment that is really maturing and assisting greatly in the establishment of a strong trading environment. Government of Kenya has also led with significant strides in infrastructure development. Probably when you left, whether that was 5 years ago, 15 years ago, 10 years ago, going to the airport was something you needed to plan for a week, which day, which route. Today you get on the expressway and you're there in 20 minutes. Those of you who live in central Kenya, going to Nyeri used to be a 4 or 5 hour journey, and if you're coming back on a Sunday, you probably needed to think, if I get stuck in traffic, where am I going to sleep? A lot of that has changed. And that infrastructure development in roads, railways, ports, energy projects have transformed our lived experience, our living experience, and make it easier to do business. Connectivity has improved due to innovation in fintech, mobile technology, digital services. M-Pesa is often celebrated for the innovation that our central bank, maybe about 10, 12, 15 years ago, embraced, that a simple SMS could have value to transfer from one point to another. Again, one of those things that we take for granted until you live in a country where cash is what you have to keep having. If I checked with most of you since you've returned how much money you're carrying around in your wallet, you actually don't. As long as you've got your phone, you can bank through your bank and through money transmission. Kenya's Vision 2020 economic blueprint, which established Konza, the Technopolis city to the east of Nairobi, has been instrumental in starting to lay the groundwork for opportunities to grow. And you've seen Tatu City, and where Unity Homes, group friends of ours, operate from. There's Tilisi out in the west, and places like that are creating world-class, near world-class facilities for you to do business and establish your operations. The groundbreaking establishment of the State Department of Diaspora Affairs just with this administration, I think for me was really the crystallization of that Kenya takes diaspora affairs seriously. And I say that not just because Ambassador Helen is here, but we've talked for many years about diaspora is a really important, so how come there wasn't an institution in government to pay attention to those affairs in the past? These initiatives have spurred the growth of remittances, the lived experience of our immigrants in the countries where they go, because now we are paying attention to how they live. When I lived in Singapore, for example, domestic help was generally sourced from Philippines. And there was a whole department in Philippines that actually paid attention to the lived experience for maids. There were rules about medical care and leave and how they travel. The Kenya Airways of there, called Philippine Airlines, even had a special luggage allowance. Kenya Airways, I think, are in the room. Please listen to this carefully. To allow them extra luggage unpaid for because you're returning home, because you had beds and mattresses, and maybe you do need not to leave them where you're going because you're going back. And things like that are perhaps opportunities for us to continue improving the lived experience for immigrants. And it has further enabled the development of business opportunities, farming, service industry. I've talked about luggage a moment ago, construction, technology, co-working spaces, and what have you. We've seen global giants like Microsoft and Visa establish innovation hubs here. Google launched their first African Development Center in Nairobi. Amazon Web Services announced a cloud infrastructure in 2022 for Kenyan businesses. And this also enables you to, if you're imagining your business and you want to establish it, it will be on the same standards that you're used to wherever it is that you're coming from. And I can't fail to mention the massive talent transfer. 20 years ago, we were talking about brain drain. Now we are talking about, I don't know what the opposite of brain drain is. Brain growth, maybe talent growth. Reverse brain drain. Brain gain, yes, exactly. Because we've all lived and worked in first world markets usually. Some of you in tougher environments. And when you come back to Kenya, that talent, that skill set that you've generated really shifts the perspectives that a lot of Kenyans have. Because if you've lived in, let's say, Somalia, for example, and then you come here and you hear Kenyans talking about troubles, you say, you've not seen trouble, my friend. I know how to do business in that, and that's so empowering. If you've lived in Australia or Europe or North America, the practices in corporates and governance and innovation are transferring back, and I think it's really benefiting. As I said, the financial sector in Kenya is strong and very well regulated. Many questions I've had, and I hope now that you've returned, you've started to see that is the truth. Is my money safe when I bank in Kenya? Which are the safe banks? And I say, banks in Kenya are generally safe. We've got a central bank that is very diligent in ensuring the stability both of the currency and of the sector to make sure that you can bank with confidence and do business with confidence. Ladies and gentlemen, as the Kenya workforce continues to expand, there's a corresponding rise in demand for startups and employment opportunities. Employment is a major concern and challenge that continues to endure in this market. This surge creates a fertile environment for innovation and entrepreneurship, making Kenya an ideal location for new ventures and job creation. The growing labor force is both a driver and a beneficiary of this economic dynamism. Having lived and traveled a lot around Africa in my career, that you can speak English from the plane, if you're on Kenya Airways, to the person helping you with your luggage, to the taxi driver, to the security guard in the apartment that you're living in, is often taken for granted in Africa. It's often taken for granted. You just need to cross a few borders here. I'm not going to mention them in case there's some around here. But then, one of my favorite things to do in Tanzania when I was stopped by a policeman is to pretend I couldn't speak English. I couldn't speak Kiswahili and I would speak English only, and he would not figure out how to ask me to do something in English, and I would get away with it. we take it for granted, the education sector, that develops a deep talent, quality and caliber in Kenya. Banks like NCBA, as I've said, have played a crucial role in facilitating remittances for Kenyans living abroad. Through our robust digital platforms and partnerships with remittance companies, we made it easier for you to do so. But more importantly, the strength also, and as I speak about NCBA, we stand as the 4th largest bank in Kenya by assets. In a good quarter, we are 3rd. I always like saying that because then people start doing the math. Okay, so who are you actually bigger than? So you do the math. 3rd, 4th largest bank in Kenya. We operate in 5 markets in Africa: Uganda, Tanzania, Rwanda, as well as Cote d'Ivoire, and looking at a couple of other markets to expand into, both through our digital banking services, which by far are the largest in Africa, through our partnership with Safaricom through M-Shwari and Fuliza. We've tailored investment advisory services because we are a full banking institution that owns, as I said, the largest digital banking fintech in Africa, maybe even in the world, but let me just stick to Africa for now. An investment bank, an insurance company. We recently acquired AIG a couple of months ago. Insurance intermediary, largest asset finance, whatever it is, NCBA sits as a very competent partner. And so if you've been uncertain with your banking experience so far, I would invite you to speak with our team. We've got a desk at the corner, and we'll be very glad to see how it is that we can work and partner together. By doing so, we've helped Kenyans abroad maintain strong connections with their homeland, but also empowered them to participate actively in the country's economic development. As I conclude my brief remarks this morning, I want to just encourage you that Kenya is at the forefront of opportunity driven by a young, dynamic workforce, thriving tech ecosystem, an innovative and supportive financial sector. As a nation, we've made significant strides in creating an environment where businesses can flourish and where Kenyans, whether at home or abroad, can contribute to the benefit of our economic growth. As we look to the future, I invite you to be part of this exciting journey. I think you're part of it already. For support, feel free to reach us. As I said, we've got a desk here. 100 branches across Kenya by the end of this year, which means wherever you are trading or looking to establish yourself, we probably are not too far away from you, where we've allocated dedicated relationship managers and investment advisors who will walk you through the many options that we have. Together, let's build a prosperous future where every Kenyan, including all our returnees, can have the confidence that they have the opportunity to thrive. In NCBA, we say, let's go for it, tuende mbele. Thank you so much for inviting me and for listening to me. And congratulations again on daring to come back and just leave knowing you have a partner in NCBA that is very willing and capable to support you. Asanteni sana.